Will Idris Elba get to play Jenny Bond?
Answer me this, answer me this.
Is there a software update for my magic wand?
Answer me this, answer me this. Helen and Ollie, answer me this.
Reunited, and it feels so good.
I told you we'd be back.
Oh, in case you've forgotten who we are, due to the lengthy break, I am Helen Zaltzman.
And I am Ollie Mann.
And I'm Martin the Soundman.
So you have had a very eventful time during our break. Some of it good. Let's start with the goods.
Yes.
On the day our last episode came out, so did Baby Man.
That's correct, yes. God, I'd forgotten that it was the same day. Amazingly, I
Same
had other
release
things
date.
on my...
You weren't listening to the final cut of our episode in the delivery room.
No, I wasn't. And I also wasn't, as one questionnaire wrote to us to ask, singing Happy Birthday to my baby. Someone said, why don't you sing Happy Birthday at the point that the newborn baby arrives? Because that would be absolutely insane, and you've been awake for 36 hours, is the answer.
I can see the head. You just want to be ready right the second he slithers out.
All right, love, keep pushing to you. So yes, Harvey is his name.
Harvey.
Yeah, we named him after my favourite restaurant, the Harvester.
But Harvey for short.
Yeah.
That's a great name.
Thank you.
I'm on record as saying you would ace the name. I think you aced the name.
Yeah, do you mean that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no reservations.
No, if I had reservations, I would just say, but what a cutie. Which he also is, an adorable baby.
Oh, thank you very much.
And if I didn't think that, I'd be like, lovely smile. Historically on this podcast, you have said such things as, I don't like babies can fuck themselves. Have you revised your opinion now that you've got one?
No, when it comes to other people's babies, so I still stand by that comment.
All of your babies' listeners can go fuck themselves.
But indeed, as you're insinuating, when it comes to one's own, one does feel differently, and that certainly has been the case for me. I go into some detail about the whole birthing experience on my other podcast, The Modern Man, but suffice to say, I was, and this never happens, completely speechless when he was born.
Wow, first time, yeah.
Yeah, I've never been speechless before. I couldn't string a sentence together. I was overwhelmed with emotion. I basically couldn't talk for about 4 hours. And when I called my parents to tell them they were grandparents, I couldn't get the words out. They thought I was taking the piss.
Oh.
I was completely debilitated with an overwelling...
You've never felt
sense
feelings
of,
before. They all came at once.
Is this what you humans call love?
It was my Dr. Spock moment.
But she's doing well, the baby's doing well, you're doing well.
Yeah, I guess so. Harvey's new thing at the moment is he's 4 months old now. He's learned how to roll onto his front.
Genius!
Yes, I think he is very clever. There's one thing I noticed right from the beginning. From day one, like I've seen other babies who sort of sit in the corner of the room, look at a wall, and they look bored all the time. He looks around and he seems engaged. So I fingers crossed he's going to be clever.
He might just have a wise face.
No, he's got my face. Looks like he's smiling all the time, even when he's miserable.
Okay.
High cheekbones. But anyway...
Tears of a clown.
Yeah, exactly. But he's managed to get himself on his front, but he now can't roll over the whole way.
He's only half genius, half idiot.
Exactly, yeah. Again, takes after me. So when I walk into a room, any room,
you don't know how to walk out again.
At the moment, all I'm hearing is my baby lying on his front going,
So Harvey Man, all round thumbs up, but something very sad happened as well in the Mann family.
Yeah, my father died.
Stanley Mann, who's kind of legendary to listeners of this podcast, I think, and to people who knew him in life.
Yeah, yes. I credit more the people that knew him in life, but it was very sweet when news got out there that he'd passed away, that a few listeners to Answer Me This did email me and say that they'd actually re-listened to episode 200, which after all you now have to purchase, in tribute to him. Yeah, he featured a few times on the show. Yeah, it was very sudden, so from his point of view, quite good, actually. But, like, shit for people left behind because he didn't get to say goodbye. It was very sudden and all that.
And he did meet his grandchild, though, so that's...
He did. They had... they met 4 times.
In a week.
Which, considering he was only a week old, was pretty good going.
Those are, like, the 2 biggest events of your emotional life.
Yeah, got them done together.
Yeah.
Got it all done at once.
And, extra poignant, you had just been given a promotion from being the policeman.
Yes, that's right. I forgot about that.
Listeners will remember, I think.
Yeah, this is a reference that you won't understand unless you're a long-time listener, but my dad used to call me the policeman because I didn't like to keep packets of butter beyond their use-by date.
Well, policeman's here.
And
that was his kind of thing,
that was
wasn't it?
Yeah. And I'd forgotten. What did he call me the day before he died? Sergeant Major, I think it might have been. I can't remember. Anyway, I just got a promotion. So there was that. And then 3 weeks later... my employers decided not to renew my contract. Which was
Fantastic.
very tactful timing on their part, I feel.
Maybe they're like, well, he already feels bad, so now's the time to pull that plug.
So this is LBC, the radio station that I work for, and they made a decision that they would rather employ Katie Hopkins than me.
Well, I've got news for you, Ollie. As of next episode of Answer Me This, you will be replaced by Katie Hopkins.
And the truth is, I genuinely, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Katie Hopkins, as you might expect, but she does what she does very well. It's different to what I do.
I think it takes a toll on one's life more than what you do.
Yes. But when I heard that it was her that was coming in and I was going, I sort of thought, well, fair enough. We're doing very different things.
You are.
And
you are.
LBC did give me my first radio show, and I'm a radio professional now, thanks to them, and hopefully I'll get to work for them again in the future. So I genuinely am not bitter about it, but the timing was not fantastic for my personal life.
Yeah.
I have to be honest about that.
If you put that in a sitcom, it would seem a bit artificial.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Tell the listeners who was covering for you when you were off work having the baby.
Nigel Farage,
Of course.
obviously. Again, he'll be sitting in for me on future episodes of Answer Me This, I'm sure.
Well, actually, we kept going during the break. I just had him in instead.
So anyway, that's what I've been up to. But since that shit sandwich with Harvey in the middle, there has been some other stuff that's been good.
Yeah, I'm relieved to hear it, because that is an extraordinary opener to the year.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I felt like you have dealt with everything admirably.
Oh, thanks. I don't know. I mean, you just do.
Not that you need my approval.
I think actually having the baby makes it all very grounding.
Yeah.
You know, you have someone to care for, someone you have to look after. That's your priority then.
Yeah, and he'd be like, I don't care if you've been replaced by Katie Hopkins, because I've done a shit and I need you to sort it out.
Exactly.
The shit is not going to wait.
And it's rising up to my neck.
Oh,
That's
really?
the thing that happens.
Babies.
Hi, this is John from Portsmouth. I've been looking at a few cookery programs. Not that I'm particularly a chef or anything, or even an amateur cook, but I keep noticing that lots of them ask for kosher salt. So, what is the difference between kosher salt and normal salt? Cheers.
Well, it is a coarser grain, and it is used. It's not actually a kosher substance, because salt is all kosher. It's used for making things
koshering.
kosher. So
Yes.
when you're drawing the traces of blood out of meat, you use a coarse grain salt, because if you used a fine grain salt, all the salt would be absorbed into the meat and make it unbearable, even for the palates of a lot of Jews.
Now, why is all salt kosher, I wonder to myself, when it's in the sea and may have been brushed by mollusks?
Not all salt is in the sea.
Yeah. But you said all salt is kosher.
Yeah.
Some salt is in the sea. Is that salt
Said the
suitable for...
Said the little red hen.
just doing my rabbinical spot on the show.
The reason why some recipes might specify kosher salt rather than normal salt
They're being
is...
pretentious.
Well,
Yes, they are.
Well, I think in Britain we would call it, what would we call it, coarse salt or flaky salt. But kosher salt does not contain some of the additives that the fine salt contains, because that has things to stop it clumping, like iodine, and some cooks won't want that in their recipes because it can alter some of the flavours of other things in an adverse way. And then sometimes they don't want to use sea salt because the minerals in that can discolour pickles.
You don't want a discoloured pickle.
And also, it's easier when you're cooking to pick up a little fingerful of kosher salt and sprinkle it evenly than it is with fine stuff.
Fine.
Those are the reasons,
But,
I think.
I mean, I've recently got into cookbooks. You know, I always used to just make stuff up, and now I've started to try and be disciplined and follow recipes.
Oh, you've really changed with fatherhood. I've never really identified with Jamie as much as I do now.
And, you know, there's this constant thing of, I don't have that particular ingredient. Is it worth going out to buy it? And so sometimes you think, okay, that's such a specialist thing, you know, rose water. I think maybe I should buy that because I can't really substitute that.
Yeah, that's a flavouring that if it's supposed to be there, you'll notice that
it's not there. Exactly. And in some of those, like, Middle Eastern recipes, you know, za'atar, things like that, you kind of think, well, I'm sure I could blend spices together myself, but I'd rather just go to Waitrose and get that thing.
Yeah.
But then there are those ones that are in between where you think, surely there's a substitute for that. And kosher salt is absolutely in that category, isn't it? Like, it means salt, basically. Yeah. So you've just explained it means coarse salt.
If it's for flavour only, like if you're throwing it into a stew, doesn't really matter.
So I think every recipe should say, salt, I use kosher salt. That means, doesn't it?
Well,
don't knock yourself out. Don't go specially to go and buy kosher salt. But some people would. Some people are like, oh, it says mirin. I have to have mirin. I can't use vinegar.
This, I think, reflects how some people use cookbooks. Some people want them to be extremely prescriptive, and some people write them wanting them to be extremely prescriptive, and other people feel the freedom to interpret the ingredients and the
give
recipe.
people the opportunity to
but
be
they
free,
have
Helen.
that
Don't
opportunity.
chain them down.
They have the opportunity because the book's not saying, I'm watching you. And if you use the wrong salt, I am climbing out this book and punching you in the face.
Yeah, well, you see, this is the problem with it. Do you remember Delia caused all that controversy?
She was prescriptive.
She was too prescriptive. She did a book called
Actual brands you have to buy in order for this recipe to work.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe was the title.
I think it was How to Cheat was the book. But anyway, I got
How
it.
to make money.
How to sell a cookbook. Well, I got a copy from the Oxfam in St Albans, which, by the way, if anyone listening to this likes cookery and lives in Hertfordshire, go to the Oxfam in St Albans every January. Every Christmas cookbook, £2. Go once a year, spend 20 quid, get all 10 of them.
They don't even have any recipes caked on the pages.
Exactly. So literally someone's Christmas present, they're giving it straight to the Oxfam. Multiple copies of all the big celebrity chefs. Anyway, Delia's How to Cheat, I got a copy from the Oxfam in St Albans. And I thought this would be great because this is the kind of level of cooking where it'll be easy, it'll be casual, you know.
Delia's not casual.
Well, that's what
it's like a drill sergeant.
Exactly. So I thought it'd be store-cupboard ingredients, but no, it's precisely half a lemon from the Sainsbury's Taste the Difference preserved lemon thing that was discontinued 4 years ago. Like Delia.
Well, you spend less time cooking but more time shopping. That's the bargain you've made with that book.
Exactly.
I don't like it.
If you've got a question, then email your question to want to be this podcast at googlemail.com. Want to be this podcast at googlemail.com. Want to be this podcast at googlemail.com. Want to be this podcast at googlemail.com.
So, retrospectors, what historical events are we ticking off on this week's run of Today in History?
On Monday, the anniversary of the day Ozzy Osbourne and a bat came face to face on stage.
On Tuesday, we go back to the future with a potted history of the DeLorean.
On Wednesday, why is the Pope guarded by those guys in floofy hats?
On Thursday, how the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ended up in Cleveland.
And on Friday, was Henry VIII really an asshole, or was it just the result of a jousting accident?
We discuss this and more on Today in History with the Retrospectors. 10 minutes each weekday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Our inbox has been more than usually amorous, I've noticed, since we've returned. I think it's partly because whilst we were away, Valentine's Day happened, and partly because we released that hour-long special about love. But we have lots of questions about love dilemmas.
We get a lot of them anyway. I think it was just the fact that we had 4 months worth in one go.
So we've discounted a lot just because we kind of think, well, that relationship has either ended or resolved.
Yeah, sometimes when someone's got a problem, you just need to leave it to run its course.
So everyone who wrote to us in February, he probably doesn't like you, sorry. But this one is relevant to now, to June. We have to do it now. So it was sent in kind of April-ish. I don't know if, John, you've made a decision about this yet, but let's try and help you out.
Okay.
It is John from New Orleans who says, I've decided I want to propose to my girlfriend.
Oh.
Correct. He says, I'm certain she doesn't listen to the podcast, by the way, so this does not impinge upon secrecy.
What if she does and she's been keeping it a secret from you all this time?
No, don't say that, because we want him to feel
Sorry.
frank about this. This is your safe space, John.
Carry on.
I would really love to propose to her at a particular remote alpine lake in her home state of Montana.
Oh, is it Lake McDonald or Lake 5
Flathead.
or Flathead Lake? Those are lakes we've been to in Montana that are remote and alpine.
I'm glad Flathead is a lake rather than that just being a heckle to Helen while she was talking.
Oh, flathead.
She's far from a flathead. Bulbous
But
head.
it's quite flat on top. Actually, it can balance things out.
No, you're
Yeah.
a round head.
It's very round.
You're not a cavalier.
You look like H.R. Geiger's alien.
Okay, thanks. Carry on.
Anyway, I don't know which lake it is.
Yeah,
but
I'm
he
just
says,
saying, good for you. There's some lovely lakes
There's
in
some lakes
Montana's
there,
alpine
yeah.
remote places.
Yeah, just showing that you have knowledge of lakes.
I understand why you would want to go to there.
There is water in Montana and it's nice.
Lake McDonald's gravel is multicoloured. It's pretty.
John says, this particular lake is of great nostalgic significance to my girlfriend as she spent many summers camping and canoeing there in her youth.
Oh.
She calls it her favourite place in the world and a place where she is truly at peace and in her element.
So I hope she says yes, otherwise that place will be tainted for her.
Exactly. Since we live far away from Montana in my hometown of New Orleans, and will for the foreseeable future, I think she'd like to have at least one really powerful memory tying our relationship to her childhood happy place. Although, as Helen suggests, if your relationship then goes sour, in fact, what you've done is make sure she has nowhere to escape to, and you've corrupted her childhood memories.
Fantastic.
We can't afford to visit Montana often, continues John, but as it turns out, we're planning a trip there in June.
Oh,
So,
what if they're there right now?
I know, that is now, folks. So, quick decision is needed. This may present my last opportunity to propose at the lake for some considerable time to come. But here's the catch.
Okay.
Had to be a catch. The reason we've planned this visit to Montana is to attend a memorial service for my girlfriend's grandmother, who passed away a few months ago. So, Helen, answer me this. Is it a bad idea to take advantage of this sombre occasion and propose during our trip, given that it's likely to be my last chance for a long while to do so at this place that means so much to her? My girlfriend has already mentioned that she might like to include a camping trip on the itinerary, but I wouldn't want to preempt her chance to reflect on her lost loved one, nor do I want her permanently associating our marriage with her grandmother's death.
I don't think that she necessarily would, especially if it's a memorial service that's a little later.
Yeah,
I think
it's not the funeral.
No, if it was the funeral and it was like a week after, I think that would be inappropriate. But this, you can celebrate her grandmother's life. It doesn't have to be miserable. It might not be. Well, I don't know her family. But also, you could introduce a happy element to an otherwise melancholy weekend.
Yeah,
the end of something but the beginning of something else. I don't think it's too bad an idea.
I think the fact that she's requested a camping trip, as you suggest, John, does indicate that she's not thinking, oh, sombre occasion, we have to be serious.
Yeah, can't do anything else enjoyable on this jaunt.
Yes, but the camping trip, that could just be between you two or whoever else you bring along. The proposal is something that's going to have to be communicated to her family. When you've just been proposed to, you want to ring up your family and say, oh, God, we're engaged to be married, right?
Oh, I see. So if the family would think it insensitive that she had gone on the camping trip.
I think the family might think it insensitive.
But if they don't, then it's fine.
Exactly.
So this is for John to gauge himself without checking with her or her family. Are they the kind of people that would be offended by you going on a camping trip at the same time as your grandmother's memorial?
Exactly. And think about the other... I mean, I don't know how many grandchildren or children this woman who's passed away had, but don't just think about the one that is directly your girlfriend's parent. Think about their siblings, because you're going to be affecting your girlfriend's parent with grief if their siblings kick off about it as well.
I think, actually, this is the kind of occasion where everyone is like, oh, a happy event.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But it was like when I went to your dad's funeral, and it was less than 2 weeks after Harvey had been born, but when he arrived later in the day, everyone's like, oh, Harvey, and they seemed genuinely joyful to see him.
Yeah, but you see, I was very wary at the time. I thought, I don't want people to have their first association of meeting my son to be at my father's funeral. So, I mean, he could have come to the graveside and he didn't for that reason. So I'm conscious of the thing of, like, judging the tone correctly. I do think it does depend, John, on your girlfriend's family, and we can't advise you on that. You have to make that decision, as Helen says. The one thing I disagree with you on is you say make that decision without them. Possibly think about making that decision with them. I mean, not from a kind of old-fashioned, I want to ask your father's hand in marriage
which gives
thing.
me the creeps.
Yeah, but just actually, if you've been together for a long time, they may be expecting this anyway. Maybe there's someone in the family you could run it past as well, just to see if there's other shit going on you don't know about. You do live on the other side of the country.
I think maybe an easy way to play this would be to act like it was spontaneous and not planned. And then you're kind of defusing the idea that it was planned and may have annoyed people.
I think she'll smell bullshit.
I mean, Martin, you proposed to Helen around her birthday, didn't you? Around her 30th birthday, which did bring some happiness to an otherwise very sombre event. Well, let us know how it goes, John.
I think go ahead and do it. Don't you? I don't think there are too many problems associated with it.
I think talk to the family.
I think take a punt.
So that's 2 say do it, 1 says do it with caution.
Okay.
So basically do it is the outcome.
Do it with 33% caution. Well, listeners, during our absence, we did release an album all about love.
Yes, this is the Answer Me This Love album. That is what it is called.
So we took that to mean sex as well.
Should you be buying sexy clothes for your mum? How do you make it fun to put on a condom? What is that liquid squirting out of your girlfriend's vagina? That kind of thing. They're real questions. If you've not engaged with our albums before, they are effectively hour-long special editions of this podcast. It's just all around one theme. So they're questions you've never heard before in the podcast, and you can buy it
on iTunes and Amazon, and also the Answer Me This store.
Yes, thank you for saying it with a very clear stir. Because I did listen back to the last episode and it sounded a bit like you were saying answermethisdoor.com.
Open the Answer Me This door.
It is. Well, the Answer Me This store, in a way, is your door to our world of paid-for content.
Yes.
But it is answermethisstore.com.
Buy answermethisdoor.com and redirect to answermethisstore.com.
Okay, all right.
And also, if you want to read more about the album before leaping in to purchase it, you can go to answermethispodcast.com/love, and you can listen right now to a clip from it as today's intermission.
It's Jacob in Wisconsin. Helen, answer me this. Why is the term horny used to describe being sexually aroused? It just makes me think of spiky, sharp vaginas, and that really doesn't do it for me.
I always imagined this was because a curved stiffy looks a bit like a horn.
Yeah, that's right. Well, maybe the profile of his own erect member is very different to a horn.
Well, that's true, in which case we shouldn't be laughing at all.
No, imagine if it was curly like a ram's horn.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Or forked like an elk.
Exactly.
Or like a narwhal.
I think a lot of men wouldn't mind being as horny as a narwhal, because that's like a metre long, isn't it?
It's pretty big, yeah. I think that's quite a horn.
Whereas actually I think that would be very impractical in life, but I bet still most men would go for it, given the option.
Well, stag's antlers is more like a tree, isn't it? And that would only be useful if you were having sex with an animal with a really complicated vagina like a duck.
Listeners, deliver us questions in your voices by phoning this number.
02081235877.
Or you can Skype Answer Me This.
But let me just tell you that if you did do that between basically New Year and mid-April, Skype saw fit not to give us those messages.
So we've never heard
sorry, I'm really sorry.
So to those of you who left absolute masterpieces deposited upon our phone line, which from experience is probably about 2 of you, I'm sorry we didn't hear it. Call back.
Call back.
And
yeah.
if you called us drunkenly and you're probably quite relieved to hear that we haven't heard it, don't worry, you haven't embarrassed yourself.
No, exactly. It's like you did just shout into the wind. But this message did make it through.
Hi, Helen and Ollie. It's Joe from Watford. Helen and Ollie, answer me this. What the fuck is Ripley's Believe It or Not of London, and why does it exist?
Well, there's 2 questions here then, aren't there? There's what is Ripley's Believe It or Not as a touristic experience?
Yes.
And then there's why specifically do we have one in London when you would perhaps correctly say this sounds like an American thing?
Yeah, well, because Brits, I think, are naturally quite cynical and apt not to believe.
Yeah, I was thinking more just that it's so schlocky and kind of obviously from the kind of American carnival tradition.
Yeah, but give me the option not to believe, I'm going to take it. It's in the Trocadero, isn't it?
It's actually in the London Pavilion, which is the building next to the Trocadero.
Right.
Possibly owned by the same landlords. This is, Answer Me This fans, the same building that once housed Rock Circus.
That was grand when you talked about Rock Circus, which I've also never been to, as I haven't Ripley's.
Right. Well, no, I've never been to Ripley's in the UK, but I've been to them all around the world. Well, no, I haven't. I've been to about 3 in the States.
Okay, so not all around it.
No, for American listeners, I've been to Ripley's all around the world. For everyone else, I've only been in America.
We're going to get complaints about that.
But it is now in the same building that has Rock Circus, which was my favourite childhood attraction when I was in the target demographic.
Mm-hmm. Which is,
I would say, actually the same as for Ripley's. Kind of, I think they're mainly aimed at, broadly, kind of 9 to 14.
Right.
And possibly slightly skewing male as well, just because there's that emphasis on sort of trivia. But obviously women can be interested in that too. But I think little boys in particular...
They love the accumulation of facts.
And also there's a slightly sort of freak show element about it as well, which probably appeals a bit more to boys. I'll return to that because the freak show thing is the thing that always concerned me. Robert Ripley was an explorer who had a newspaper column in the 20s and 30s. So it's going back a long time. It's a long tradition now. And it went all the way through to the 1950s, I believe. And he died in 1949, but the newspaper column actually continued for decades. I think it's still being printed in some newspapers around the world. And the column, the phrase was, believe it or not, ! Fact. So it was like, believe it or not, there are insects that can eat a human hand. Believe it or not, one man has such a large forehead, he can steer a car. That kind of thing. Believe it or not. Right? That's the format.
What does it actually mean, the phrase believe it or not? It's sort of unnecessary, isn't it? You're saying a fact. It doesn't really matter whether someone can believe it or not because it's a fact.
That's what it's there for, isn't it? It's to say, well, you may be sceptical about this, but I assure you this is the truth.
Well, that's a less catchy phrase, I own.
It's just a more immersive way, a more attention-grabbing way to say, here are some surprising facts, which is not a very catchy title. A bit like Answer Me This. You know, you're involving the listener, aren't you? You're involving the reader.
Yes, your role is to decide whether or not you believe the following thing.
So,
interactive in the 20s and 30s.
Exactly. And it was enormously popular and then went on to become a massively popular radio show which ran for 14 years.
Wow.
So we're catching up, but, you know...
9.5.
He has the edge.
Have we been doing this for more episodes than Kelsey Grammer did Frasier? That's, for me...
That's the benchmark. It's got to be a similar number.
Don't forget him playing it in Cheers.
The 264 episodes of Frasier, I don't know how many cheers.
That's what you got to find out. Carry on.
So, yeah. Anyway, it was just being developed into a TV show when Ripley died.
Mm-hmm.
He made a TV show, I guess it was also called Ripley's Believe It or Not.
You wouldn't mess with that name if that name was the successful label, despite being nonsense.
Don't drop the hit. And he died on stage. Did a Tommy Cooper. Yeah. I mean, pre-Tommy Cooper, so he wouldn't have known that. We wouldn't have known anything. He had a heart attack. But anyway, he was on stage talking about the origins of the military funeral hymn Taps.
Wow.
Yeah.
People would have been like, well, if you talk about funeral facts, then naturally.
Yeah.
So when did he die?
He died in 1949.
And when did the houses of Believe It or Not begin? Are there lots of them?
The first auditorium, that's what he called them, 1934 at the World's Fair. So he lived to see his creation spin off into an interactive exhibit, but perhaps he didn't live to see the touristic behemoth that it's become.
No.
Because basically wherever you find American tourists, you find a Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Well, that explains why there is one next to Piccadilly Circus.
Which is essentially Orlando, but in the rain.
Which is why it's terrible.
But in London, the Ripley's Believe It or Not there, which opened a couple of years ago, is the largest in the world, which I didn't know.
It opened a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think, or maybe, well,
I assumed it had been there since the 70s.
Oh, no. I mean, I'm estimating, but I mean, it's definitely not been there for more than 5 years.
I'm amazed.
Yeah,
I assumed it was just a relic of another time of tourism that they couldn't quite be bothered to get rid of.
Well, in a way it is, because they've got exhibits on the tallest man in the world. And they also have sculptures of the fattest man to ever have lived that Ripley met, which actually they had in Guinness World Records, which was the exhibit that used to be there.
Right.
So I wonder if they did inherit some of the models from that.
So Believe It or Not is just the more freak show elements of Guinness World Records.
Yeah, but that doesn't really do it justice, because it's just it's
Go on, Ollie, do it justice.
Well, he did
do it for Ripley.
Ripley's columns were about a miscellany of things. That's why they were so, but rather like this show, right?
Rather like The Straight Dope and many things.
Yeah, you know, as well as encouraging the audience to get involved by wooing them in with such an addictive title, he'd also give them sort of a mix of tragicomic and trivial and serious facts. So yes, there's a freak show element to it, which has always made me a little bit uncomfortable. But then there's also like weird art and so for example, in London, they have apparently a portrait of Michelle Obama made from soda caps.
Oh, look at that. Anything with Michelle Obama.
Yeah. A Christmas card from Prince Charles to Prince Philip.
Big deal.
I know, again, but to a Yank tourist probably is a bigger deal. First edition books from Agatha Christie.
Okay.
So it's a really sort of miscellaneous collection of stuff. And also the Titanic, made out of 147,000 matchsticks.
See, that's what you go in there for, not to look at a first edition Agatha Christie, which as spectacles go, is unremarkable.
Something for everyone, I guess. And this is the thing that makes me a bit disconcerted. Still something for the person in 2016 who wants to say, look at this hairy woman's face. Look at this man with a tiny hand.
Is it Donald Trump?
Yeah.
So it's like Channel 4 factual programming.
Yes.
Three-dimensional.
Exactly. No, it is very much like that. Yeah, that's the mix. I mean, he was an explorer in the 30s. Therefore, people who he was writing for hadn't seen brown people. Mm-hmm. So there was a completely different level of look at this amazing thing, because it wasn't just look at this tribe who wear 25 brass rings around their neck. It was just look at this tribe, aren't they exotic and odd? Yeah. So there's still an element of that, I think. The modern day website tries to put a spin on it by saying visitors walk through our beauty room to learn about how beauty is perceived in different cultures.
Okay, so that's more anthropological than just plain exoticism.
Yeah, but it's still like, look at this shrunken head of this guy that lived in Brazil. Mm-hmm. It's also tremendously bad value. If you book in advance, by the way, if you're a tourist, you listen to this, you want to come to London, you want to go to Ripley's, book in advance.
How much?
50% off in advance, full price on the door.
Yeah.
Guess. Okay, large, but essentially series of rooms showing displays. It's a museum. How much?
Okay, I'm guessing with 50% off.
Yeah.
£14.
I need to do some maths.
So that would be 28 full price.
Staggeringly accurate.
Am I? I did not look that up.
You are 5 pence off.
And I've never been. So is it $13.95?
It's $27.95 per person, full price.
Crivens.
And 50% off.
That's quite a lot, isn't it?
But how are they dealing with the halfpenny of dividing the 95 pence in half? Do they go up or down? Like, tell you what, you get to keep that halfpenny.
That's what they call Ripley's share.
I wonder why that price point as well, why the 95? Why not just call it £28? Does anyone
because
think...
psychologically people are like, well, £28 would be too much, but most of £27... it's okay. Yeah.
I understand the psychology when it's $9.99,
yes.
but 27, 28, that's not a border in my mind.
Both of those are expensive for that experience.
I wonder if it comes to a different price in dollars. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's like the $40 price point.
Yeah,
probably is, isn't it? It's probably that cynical. Despite slagging it off, having read a bit about it now, I'd quite like to go. So if you work for Ripley's, invite us along. I'd happily go and pose with Helen in front of the world's fattest man.
And one of us going, I believe it, and the other one going, I can't. I just can't believe it.
I like reading, but not while I'm driving. Apparently that's illegal.
I want to listen to Richard Dawkins reading Darwin's Voyage of the Beagle.
Me too. Well, now we can do that, and I'll keep my license by signing up for a free audiobook.
Let's go to answermethispodcast.com/audible and have a look now. Oh, it's nice to hear those jingles again. Those are some of my favourite ever Answer Me This jingles, the Audible ones.
Yeah, we're running the Audible offer again, I think for the first time since 2011, something like that. It's been years anyway. So yes, the deal's the same. We, or at least our good friends at audible.co.uk, are offering you Answer Me This listeners the chance to have a completely free audiobook.
Yay. Out of, how many have they got to choose from?
Now they have over 150,000 to choose from.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember when Audible was nout but fields.
It was nout but 30,000 books read by Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, exactly. But now they're full of books.
Yes, and also this offer is available to listeners around the world.
Around the world. So all you do is you go to answermethispodcast.com/audible. Oh, felt nice to do that again. And you click the link and it will take you to your local version. So if you're in Japan, you go to the Japanese Audible. If you're in the US, you go to the US Audible, so on. And you get a free audiobook if you sign up for the month's free trial.
But you can cancel at any time.
Yeah, so that's the important thing. You do put your credit card details in, and obviously if you don't cancel, then you'll be a member of Audible, which, by the way, is a good thing. But if you don't want to pay anything, you need to cancel. But if you want to support Answer Me This, the good thing is, not only do you get your free audiobook...
That's yours to keep.
That's yours to keep. Even if you cancel... our friends at Audible will still send us some remuneration to thank us for featuring them on the show. So you are supporting Answer Me This just by getting this offer.
You're telling Audible, give these guys money.
Yeah.
We like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you cancel. So you don't have to pay anything and we can get some money and you get a free audiobook. That is a deal for winners.
And the last audiobook that I listened to was the actor Jane Lynch.
Yes.
Her memoir.
Does Martin always have that reaction when you say Jane Lynch?
Pretty much.
Yes.
Oh, he just did. Yeah?
Was really...
Let me try one more time. Jane Lynch?
Yes.
Her audiobook's really good.
Yeah.
It's really, really good.
And she's reading it, which...
That makes a huge difference, doesn't it, when it's the person that's written the book and it's about her own life. So that, that's like 3 levels of Jane Lynch.
She digs deep. But, can I spoiler this? The book kind of ends on a happy ending in that she has just got married, but we knew at the time of listening that she and her wife were just getting divorced.
Ooh.
Yeah. But other than that, I think the facts remain.
It sounds like a good one. The last audiobook that I listened to was David Mitchell reading his memoirs. Backstory, I think it's called.
We both love comedian actor memoirs read by that person.
It's because, exactly, it's the person telling their life story. Obviously, he's a very engaging storyteller anyway. And yeah, to be honest, no disrespect to David Mitchell. Mm-hmm. I like him. I like his career. I probably wouldn't sit and read his book.
Yeah.
I wouldn't sit in a deck chair, it's where I tend to read on holiday, for 3 days reading about what's it like backstage on Would I Lie to You. But when I'm walking around a field, perfect.
Lovely.
Just the dulcet tones of Mitchell in my ears. Anyway, lots of other books, as in 149,998 other books to choose from at Audible. And the really good thing about this offer, final thing, is that even if you've done this before... So, we've run this promotion before.
Nice.
So have other podcasts, let's be honest. Even if you've taken out a free book on Audible before, so long as it was more than 12 months ago, they'll let you bloody do it again.
Yes.
That's pretty good. AnswerMeThisPodcast.com/audible. Thank you.
Here's a tale from Leslie Ann. She says, I just stepped on a snail in bare feet.
Oh, traumatic experience, I'm sure.
Slimy and crunchy. Its shell is crushed, but the snail is kind of intact. Ollie, answer me this. Is it dead? Even if it's not, can a snail live without a shell? Or is it now just a slug? Leslie Ann, I know you want me to say yes, it's just a slug, it's going to have a happy life as a slug, but it does rather sound like it's going to die, I'm afraid. Snails can live with a partially cracked shell,
It's a bit like when we crack our fingernails. That's all it is. So they have calcium stores, and they can regrow some of that bone again if you leave them for, I think, 14 days.
Okay.
And so if you see one that's like partially cracked but it's struggling, if you put it somewhere where it can hide from predators,
like a snail sanatorium.
Exactly. And there's lots of instructions online as to how you can create one of those if you can be asked, but really I'll just shove it under your garden shed. Then it will recuperate after 14 days.
Okay.
But if the shell has like cracked into its organs and stuff, which usually happens when you stand on it, you're quite heavy, Leslie Ann, I imagine.
Compared to a snail. This is not
not
personal
judging.
Judgment.
Not body shaming, but you're probably heavier than the snail.
Exactly. Then, to be honest, the best thing to do now is probably to euthanize that snail, which does mean drop a brick on it.
Or salt. So you horribly dissolving its flesh.
Apparently, if you really want to quickly kill a snail,
boil it
humanely, freeze it.
Oh, so it just goes to sleep.
But this is only quick if you already have a Tupperware container full of water in the freezer.
Yes.
But if you do and it's just at freezing point, if you just drop it in, it will die instantly. So there you go. That's the best thing to do. They will be alive for a while because what it is the muscles that are connected to the shell are the same muscles that the snail requires to breathe.
Right.
So it's a bit like you having a blockage on your lungs and then slowly just panting to death over the course of, say, 12 hours.
Oh, that's sad.
So that's why they look alive and you think, oh, it'll live as a slug. No, it's just panting to death. So best to crush it.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, if you're going to do it properly.
Yeah.
Don't maim a snail.
Here's a question from Claire in Allistock who says, Helen, answer me this. Why do maple syrup jars have a tiny handle on them? That is a good point. It's impractical and it's a sticky liquid, isn't it? So if it goes over the side in the future, you really want a firm grip to make sure you're not spilling it all over the place.
Yeah.
Why do they do that?
What is with the tiny handles? It's a bit like espresso cups, though. Those handles are not really for human hands, are they?
But they control a small volume of fluid, don't they? An espresso cup.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
appropriate.
Whereas a maple syrup jar, that's quite heavy when it's full.
Well, it's more of a heritage handle because maple syrup originally came in these huge earthenware jugs with a big handle on them, and then when they started selling it in little bottles, they scaled down the whole design, so the handle became tiny as well.
Like when the Independent went compact.
Yeah, exactly. But the pages didn't become proportionally loads thinner like the handle. The handle is unusably small.
Yeah.
But presumably it's less likely to break than if it had been a bigger handle.
I get it now. It sort of makes sense aesthetically. So it's like if Heineken or whatever sold a beer keg for your fridge that was an eighth the size of a beer keg and they put a fake tap on the front of it.
Yeah, and the tap was so small that no beer could come out.
Yeah.
Yes, it is like that.
Except you actually need the handle to pour the maple syrup. So it is a design flaw, isn't it?
Well, I gather that in Quebec, which is responsible for 91% of Canada's maple syrup production.
Goodness me.
Their maple syrup comes in cans, and you puncture 2 holes in the can and pour it out of one, and the other one is for pacing the flow. So they don't trifle with these residual handles. But this is an example of skeuomorphic design, so decorative feature that is based on a formerly essential feature.
Yes, like the original Podcasts app, which had a reel-to-reel design.
Yeah, well, do you remember just a lot of the earlier iPhone software in the Jobs era, a lot of that was skeuomorphic, like the notebook looked like a notebook.
Yeah.
It's still all over the place. Like the trash can on my computer is a waste paper basket, and email icon is an envelope.
The save is still a disk.
Cut icon, scissors. I read that Greek columns, the ones where they've got ridges down them, that might be skeuomorphic, even though that's ancient, because the columns were, before that, tree trunks, which are not smooth.
Yeah.
But
so
also,
it's a representation of wood grain.
Yeah, but also I wonder whether it's just much harder to make a perfectly smooth, cylindrical column. Any mistake is going to be a lot more obvious than if there are some ridges on it. That's what I suspect.
Interesting. Okay, it's a reasonable answer, but I still think if I was a maple syrup manufacturer...
Which you could be.
I'm still only 35.
You know, LBC let you go. Now's the time for a new business.
Yeah.
Answer Me This brand maple syrup is brought to you by...
I haven't checked, but I bet that there are hipster maple syrup brands where the packaging is novel and not like this pseudo-traditional tiny handle thing.
That's what I'd do, yeah.
You would?
I would, and I'd really give it the hard sell, because I think...
Would you do squeezy bottle like squeezy honey?
Yeah, make it as convenient as possible.
Spray.
Spray is good.
Aerosol.
I'm just saying, I think maple syrup would be more widely used if they changed the bottle.
Maybe they don't want it to be more widely used because Canada's trees are tapped out.
On that point, I have an issue as well. I think maple syrup is Canada's thing, right?
Yeah.
It's on the flag, for God's sake.
Let them have a thing, Ollie.
Let them have a thing. No, I agree. The point I'm making is actually I would insist that maple syrup had to... I would regionalise it. You know that thing like the feta cheese and champagne?
Oh, what's it called? Like the place of origin designation?
That thing, yeah.
Yeah.
I would ensure that on maple syrup because... It pisses me off, actually, when I'm in every airport in North America and they've got their own maple syrup. I just think, just let Canada have their thing.
That's sugar water, isn't it? Maple-flavoured sugar syrup.
It's disgusting. Give it to Canada, let them sort out their bottles. The world would be a better place.
Wow, you've become very political in our break. All the important issues.
Answer me this. 1066 was the Norman invasion. 1818 was the publication of Persuasion. Wasn't it? I love that book. They all wear bonnets. I got my own with a pretty flower on it. Don't I?
Amy from Leeds says, Ollie, answer me this. Is it true that if you direct the pilot for a TV show...
I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I'll be honest. My agent's working quite hard on the radio gig at the moment.
I think she meant general you, not you, Ollie Mann, specifically.
Okay.
But how typical of you to interpret that?
Kind of about me.
Is it true that if you direct the pilot for a TV show, you get money every time any episode of that show is aired?
Yes.
Whoa, what?
Well, it was a good reaction.
Thanks.
To a very hesitant yes.
What?
I didn't say yes, to which you'd go, whoa.
Okay, should I
go?
go?
Like, yeah.
What?
Yeah, maybe.
What? Whoa.
You could say that.
Whoa. Believe it or not, I can't decide.
So the reason that there was a sceptical yes is the answer is a very firm yes if you are a Hollywood director. Mm-hmm. So if we're talking about the big sort of box set type shows, you know, your Billions, your Dexters, those kind of shows, yes. If you direct one of those, then it is written into... the Guild of American Directors or whatever, and the Hollywood industry in general, that if you're the director on the pilot episode, then at the very minimum, you'll of course get a very decent fee for the first episode, something like $150,000. But then you will get, at the very minimum, a royalty of between $1,000 and $5,000 for every subsequent episode that's made.
That seems extraordinary, because often things change so much from the pilot episode to the series that the director of the pilot doesn't really have that much credit.
Well, but if you think about all the elements that come back week on week, so the cast, you know, the director's been part of the casting process.
But then also often from pilot to series, that cast can change quite a lot.
It can, but the ones that stay, the director had a role in. You've got the title sequence, which often the director has directed, which, you know, can be the way that lots of people tune into the show week after week. Mm-hmm. And the general kind of tone and style of the show. So, like, if you think of House of Cards and David Fincher's involvement in that, you could say that it's been directed in a Fincher-esque style ever since episode 1, even though he only directed episode 1. Uh-huh. And if you look at House of Cards, it's quite interesting. He's remained, I think he's executive or associate producer, and I don't know how involved he is in House of Cards. Maybe he is very involved, but what basically happens is if you get a big name like that, or Martin Scorsese in Boardwalk Empire, or Bryan Singer on House, what they'll do is they'll direct the first episode, get their $150,000, then get their $5,000 for every episode subsequently, but say, oh, and I want to be an executive producer because I've had a key role in creating this. And that comes with, I don't know, $20,000-$25,000 more per episode. And then they might even say, I want a sales bonus because this has gone to series as a result of my hard work, and they'll get another $50,000 out the studio. Oof. So for one pilot, a big director, a Tarantino or a Spike Lee or something, can make $1 million.
But what about littler pilots?
Well, if by that you mean Britain.
Or just pilots. There are so many American series that are piloted and they're not necessarily big. Obviously, a lot of them don't go beyond pilot. But the ones that do go beyond pilot, but just for a series or two, and it was quite a small production.
Still, it's like I say, it's gilded. Wow. It's in the
it's
in their equity. You get between $1,000 and $5,000 for every episode.
But Brits,
as with all showbiz in this country, emphasis on the show, less on the biz. We are a bunch of rank amateurs that are very bad at making money.
Just
out of
happy
our creative
to be
skills.
Taking part.
Yes, exactly. Just happy to be leading the world in artistic endeavours, but also quite content to give all the money to J.K. Rowling and Ben Elton. If you direct a pilot here, I believe there is no such formal arrangement. Although I suppose your agent can haggle if you're a big deal.
Yeah, if you are. But if you're not, which most people aren't.
Which most people aren't. So I reckon if you've directed a pilot for Channel 4 or
try
something,
being a big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you'll get much better returns.
Use the leverage to go and make a show for Netflix. That's my advice.
Right. So, answer to her question, it is true.
It is true.
Good to know. Going to look out for directing gigs.
Yeah, well, exactly. And reference your earlier Frasier point.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're on a show that goes into hundreds of episodes,
which I am,
and you're
this one,
and you're making $5,000 per episode, even without the executive producer credit and everything else,
yeah,
you can live off that, can't you? 24 episodes a year.
Syndication as well, rerunning all the time.
Yeah.
Once they're over 100 episodes, that's when the money rolls in.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you have a question for us, then please do email or phone or Skype. All of our contact details are on our website.
AnswerMeThisPodcast.com. And this time you don't have to wait 4 months. There'll be another episode along in 2 weeks'
3
time.
3 years. What?
But if listening to our return has prompted you to think, oh yeah, these guys are good, I would like to hear them elsewhere on the internet, do check out our other spin-off projects.
Yeah, I saw people going, well, I've been listening to Modern Man to make up for your absence. I make a podcast too, you shits. It's called The Allusionist.
Yes, and it's all about words and origins and how people use words and language.
It's more really about humans and communication.
Oh no, you've been with Radiotopia too long.
What do people mean, really? There are gags in it. I took a pop at the band Extreme the other day.
TheAllusionist.org.
TheAllusionist.org. Posh org, right?
Indeed. The Modern Man is back for another series, which is almost ended, by the way. We do series of 10. So
then you can binge listen.
You can binge. We talk about sex, trends, culture, food, all of that kind of thing. It's a magazine show. There's even a song at the end.
Martin and I listened to one whilst driving through a blizzard across the top of a mountain in Colorado. So it was terrifying because we could not see. Everything was white. Couldn't tell what was the road or not. And we were listening to Modern Man and I thought, I do not want to die listening to you talking to a woman about blue dildos.
Well, modernman.co.uk, MANN. And Martin, you too have your own, your numerous spin-off
I've
products.
got a couple.
Choose one.
Well, no, don't
be greedy.
I've got two on friends. So I've got Sound of the Ladies, which is my music podcast, and it's its 100th episode.
Wow.
It's only a monthly podcast.
I remember our 100th episode. God,
we were so young.
That's 100 songs that I've recorded and put out. And this month, because it's the 100th episode, I'm going to be putting out covers other people have done of my songs, which is making them sound better. That's quite nice. And I do a podcast called Song by Song, which is about the music of Tom Waits. We've recently had the lovely Jeffrey Craner from Night Vale. And he's our guest at the moment.
He's
a fantastic guest.
He hadn't listened to Tom Waits, had he?
I don't think so, no. Many of our guests haven't listened to Tom Waits.
He got the hang of it quickly.
They learn quickly, yeah.
I've never listened to Tom Waits. I haven't been invited on.
Well, if you play your cards right.
Yeah. We've got another 12 albums to get through, so just hang on there. That's songbysongpodcast.com.
There we go. And remember as well, if all of that weren't enough to get your free audiobook as well, answermethispodcast.com/audible. Thanks.
And we will return in 2 weeks.
2 weeks Thursdays. Mark it in your diary.
Bye.